It's crazy. Those photos of New York City is insane.
It
Um,
really is.
no, not that. Just just some good old fashioned allergies, man. Classic
Okay. Good
stuff.
old classic, man.
Uh, yeah, you gotta love the classics. Got this bad boy shared. um, honestly, I was pretending to be Jonathan Majors earlier before we started recording this, and now I have a tickle in my throat. So that was my fault because I was yelling way too much. Um, so hey, we'll get through this podcast. I'm very excited for this one. In fact, so excited. You may be wondering, John, how excited are you? So excited. I'm gonna hit record right now.
Crazy. That is excited.
It is exciting. All right, what's going on, everybody? Good to see y'all on the live stream with us tonight. We'll hope you'll stick around.
Mm-hmm.
This episode is going to be a really good one. We're going to unpack Apple's developer conference. They had a lot of big things, some of it behind the scenes, but one very big one, and it is augmented reality. It is putting on a set of goggles and then seeing a virtual world around you. It's
Mm-hmm. Pretty
very,
crazy.
very cool. It's something we've been talking about for a while. It's something we've known that's coming for a while. But to basically give you the imagination of what this would be like, imagine a world with no TVs in your house, no calendars, no clocks. You know, it's a pretty clean wall all the way through. But then you go home, you put these goggles on, you have a fake TV that's up on the wall, a fake clock, a fake calendar, but it's all Apple looking, like
Mm-hmm.
what you see on your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all based off of you wearing these goggles. It's the blending of the real world and the virtual world, thus being augmented reality, right?
Yep.
What stood out to you about this, like off the top?
I think the biggest thing is the build, right? I think well, okay, there's like two things that stood out for me. So honestly, the first thing that really stood out for me was the price. Um it's a little it's a little bit on the expensive side, especially because of looking at the VR headsets that we've had out in recent years, right? It's been pretty not super cheap, but it's become more affordable than it was back in the day, right? Because back in the day, if you wanted to do a really good like VR headset, you'd be spending a whole bunch of money, right? Not just on the headset itself, but also on the hardware to drive the stuff, and it would be separate, right? You need like a separate PC, and then also the headset. And this is an all-in-one type of deal, so it's a little different, but it is still very expensive
Yeah.
than any of the other headsets that are on the market currently.
And you would expect that, but you should also expect that Apple premium price tag that we've come to know and love over the years. Anytime a new Mac has dropped, anytime a new iPhone's dropped, except for the last couple of years with iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, this is going to be a premium price tag, absolutely. Um, but yeah, we want to talk about that. There's also new Mac OS updates. There's new iOS updates. Surprisingly, no mention of AI, or at least very little mention of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is going to be a little bit of a shakeup for us based off of the podcast we are doing this season of the catch up. So remember, if you like us, because this is what we're talking about. If you like this episode, like us, give us a like, give us a review, and subscribe. All three of those things in their own way help us continue to grow. It helps us know what we can do better to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the second best way, which I jumped the gun on the first, but the second best way you can support us is by jumping on these live streams, as many of you are right now. There's one. And number two, oh, there it comes. There it comes. Number two, jump on the live streams, follow us. We go live every Thursday night. And it's a great way to interact with you. We want you to jump in the comments and talk about these topics with us in real time. And number three, Go over to our shop. It's linked down wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. We have some good, clean merch, and it looks great. It fits great. It's comfy. You're gonna love it. We got hats, beanies, t-shirts. There's all three. Yeah, there's three. We got all kinds of things over there. So check it out and let us know what you think. With that said, man, I think this is gonna be a good topic. So let's go ahead and get into it.
All right.
So I was thinking the other day of explaining this real quick to any new listeners, or I'm sorry, any new viewers that we have.
Mm.
Um, the live stream, the main reason for this is we want you guys to get involved in the comments. But also, what you'll see us do is basically do the edits for the audio version as well. And so you'll see us pause on the topic, what you're talking about. Dennison or I will say, let's go ahead and get into it. And then we'll count in like 3, 2, 1. And that on the audio files helps us to know where to chop it and edit
Mm-hmm.
it so the people that only listen to audio can know. So the main reason we do this, we want you to get involved with us, but we also, it's kind of a behind the scenes look. So that's why you see that raw kind of stop and start there that we do at the beginning. Um, so yeah, this will be a good one.
Yeah,
So
I think
as I
so.
just teased, let's go ahead and get into it. Three, my bad. 2, 1. What's going on, everybody? I'm John,
And I'm Dennison.
and this is the catch up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Oh man. I really should not have done that scream earlier. That was funny. Uh, okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so like I mentioned, man, there's a lot of big stuff off this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest and the one that everyone's gonna want to hear about the most has gotta be the Apple Vision Pro, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So what do you have? Do you have any feelings, any thoughts, any takeaways off the top that you want to jump into?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So for one, it's a if you guys haven't seen it, it looks kind of like ski goggles, right?
It
They
does.
they took
Yes.
on the ski goggles full on look there. But it's a pretty beefy piece of hardware that they're really pushing. And I do understand that's kind of where some of the price tag comes into play. But yeah, the cool thing about it is that it has one a ton of cameras, right? A ton of cameras, a ton of sensors on there, a lot more than what we have seen in any headset that we VR headset than that we've had,
Wow.
ever,
Yeah.
really. So it's using all these sensors. It actually has the cool thing about it is that it actually has so many sensors that it has a dedicated chip just for those sensors, just to take in all of that information and be able to process it real time so that way there's no lag or latency. So that's really, really cool. So
Which
from a
that's
hardware, yeah, no, you're right. It is insane, right? It also has their newest version of Apple Silicone to make it even more robust. And actually, if you're on the live stream and you're seeing this picture here, that blue part, so that's a whole OLED screen, right? Um, if Which is really cool. So there's a whole OLED screen right in front of the headset, which has not been done before on any other headset. So that's another thing that's kind of a first and another really interesting and big thing that they have going on here. Um, and I'll actually use that to kind of jump into the other thing that they have. They have this uh deal to where like essentially whenever you're in AR, right? So the
augmented reality. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the augmented reality version portion, that OLED screen there changes and shifts to essentially like video representation of your eyes, right? Of your face, the rest of
Oh,
your face that's covered. So it displays that so that way it makes people, well, at least the way that Apple describes it as, it makes it so that people feel as though they are um, still interacting with you, right? It makes them feel like you don't have a headset on or whatever like that. I still feel like you can tell that a
wait.
person
So what
has the
you're
headset.
saying is, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no
What
worries. Go
you're
ahead.
saying is this area right here
Yep.
will display a representation of the part of your face that is covered
Mm-hmm.
in a way that looks proportional to the rest of your face.
Correct.
That's even weirder than
Yeah.
that's weirder than the technology that's providing for the person who's wearing it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a way for people to not feel like this person is just like fully devoid of stuff. So the cool thing about it is that as you switch between AR and VR, um, that will change. So AR mode, yeah, your eyes are going to show up that way, which it does look kind of strange. So if you see some of the pictures of the person, I think there's the most prominent one where it's like this lady sitting down and you can see her eyes and stuff like that through this screen, and
Yeah,
then you see her mouth. It does look kind of weird, um but but yeah, what's it's supposed to do is shift between these two versions, right? So this OLED screen where you see it kind of like all different colors and all those stuff like that, and then your eyes and stuff like that depending on how it goes. So it's kind of interesting, little weird, but I want to see it. I want to see what happens, what it looks like in person. I think that's one of the biggest things for me about this headset in general, right? It's
yeah,
got a lot going on for it. Um, I just need to see it, man. As a person who does VR, who has a VR headset, it seems very intriguing. I think one of my biggest concerns is the weight because it's made out of metal and like really high quality materials.
okay,
Not saying that the materials that say like some of the other VR headsets are made of aren't high quality, but they're they use mostly plastic, and they're using that plastic because of the weight savings, right? You're not going to put a
right,
piece of metal on someone's face, uh,
sure,
because it makes it heavier. And if you're using this like long term, it's not something that you want to have like on your face for long if it's really heavy,
yeah.
or
Well,
essentially on your head, really. But
I definitely appreciate and always appreciate Apple's build quality. They typically, as far as the frame of their technology goes, it's pretty good,
mm-hmm.
especially this. But that leads into its $3,500 price tag, which we'll get into more in a moment.
Yeah,
But that definitely did no favors in lowering that price. Um,
correct.
and definitely, as we talk about this, if you're on the live stream, please jump in the comments. We want to know your thoughts on this technology. Because what one thing that immediately stands out to me looking at this picture we have up on the stream, anytime I've seen an advertisement for Apple's Vision Pro, they have it straight on. It's a straight on look of the glass area, right?
Yep.
And just the glass area. So what makes it look like is it's literally going to be, like you said, a thin ski mask that goes up around your eyes.
Yep.
That's what it makes it look like it's going to be, but it's not. It actually in real life looks just like a Meta Quest or an Oculus or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, don't get me wrong, that makes sense. They got to put the processing horsepower somewhere.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly. They do. It's just how things are.
but that just doesn't look comfortable for me. Um, coming home, be like, man, what a long day. What a long day. Let me see what my living room looks like. Really,
No,
my
I mean, you're right.
yeah,
Like, woohoo! I can't wait to freaking um deal with all of the, I can't wait to to sit down and watch a cool movie in my VR headset that weighs a ton.
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't know. So my next question is, who does this appeal to? Um, is it solely for entertainment, or is there a larger use for something like this?
So yeah, I think the main focus on this is for sure supposed to be more entertainment, right? They touted a lot in their presentation that, you know, you can use this as your home theater system, right? Because it's got built-in speakers that are really good, and you can have
Yeah.
this really massive display. Because you know it's a, you know, pointing camera, or your eyes are, you know, looking at it, and it has like 4K mini LED display technology in there, so it's, you know, really high quality and stuff like that. um but then they also did talk about how well it will interface with Mac OS, right? So if you already have a Mac product, right, because it's Apple, and they really want you to stay in their ecosystem. Apple loves their little ecosystem, and they don't like other people to be outside of it. But so they demonstrated that, you know, if you had a MacBook, right, you could essentially project your display up, and have a bigger display that you can view in the VR headset, and then your Mac just becomes keyboard and stuff like that.
Okay.
Keyboard and trackpad. You know, if it's a MacBook, it'll be like keyboard and trackpad that you can use for everything, of course. So that was kind of one of the things that they were trying to push on that. Was like, oh, you can do this and
Okay.
stuff like that.
So I'm piecing this together, right? There's Apple, like actual desktop Macs.
Mm-hmm.
There's Apple TV, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's a million other Apple things, right? But you can get rid of all of them and use all that money to go towards this AR goggles, just so and keep your keyboard. Don't get rid of your Apple keyboard, but you can keep that. You could literally do everything. You could do work on here. You could play, you could watch TV. You, like you said, you won't need a TV or stereo system. All you will need are subscriptions, to stream and all that kind of stuff. Um, and that would be it. Basically, everything you would need ever for work. Work sounds like it'd be kind of hard. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm sure it could be done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for work and play and relaxation, except for driving, you could do with these on, right?
Yep.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I
Like I
mean,
said,
it's supposed to be have kind of like a mini computer vibe kind of going on in it.
yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. The only time I would ever use these
Mm.
are when they become like the glasses that Tony Stark left Peter Parker, dude. They become like that, and the whole heads-up display is just in the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would use it. But if I have to basically look like I'm going down Pikes Peak on skis, then I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I especially don't want to have company over and look like my eyes just popped out of my head when people look at me. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. This is a weird technology to me. It's definitely it's not weird. The idea of it is very cool to me. I will say that. But it is very like anti status quo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you go over to a person's house that owns a Vision Pro and they're really serious about their Vision Pro, and they don't like their walls are bare. You know what I mean? Their rooms
Mm-hmm.
are bare. And that's kind of one thing I was thinking about, right? You have company over, people like, hey man, let's listen to some music, right? You're having a party.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I'm sorry, I only got one Vision Pro. Otherwise, we could listen to music. Dang.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not something you can share unless you buy a second one. So even
Yeah.
then, if you wanted to sit down and watch a movie with somebody, that is over at your place, whether it's your wife, whatever. Um, you can't really do that at the same time, you know, with this. So that was actually, in all seriousness, my biggest complaint or concern
Mm-hmm.
is this is a very much one person thing. It's an isolationist technology.
Yeah. Yeah. As most, if not all, VR headsets are like that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I know the Meta Quest 2 VR headset does have like a companion app that you can use, so that way you can say like stream it to a TV, so you can stream what you're seeing on the VR headset onto a TV. So that
Mhm.
way someone can kind of watch what you're doing, and so then it can kind of be a shared experience. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Apple did something similar to that for this later on. Um, it's just kind of a part of how VR headsets are right now. I'm sure as they get smaller, as they get more efficient, I think I can easily see more people using stuff like this, and it becoming less of like a very privileged person's thing, right?
Yeah.
Now I don't know if we'll ever get past a point to where we won't need like, these guys, right? Our smartphones, but
Sure. Yeah.
um, I can see it. If you can have something about this thin, right, that you put in your pocket and it does all of the processing on, say, a pair of glasses, like regular glasses, for, uh, I mean, that would be cool, right? That would be
Mhm.
really, really cool. That way you have it in your pocket, you have all your AR stuff going on, you have all your VR stuff going on, and it's not a huge amount of stuff on your face.
Right. I will say what we really need instead
Mhm.
of this technology, and I'm not saying this as a joke, I'm saying it's because it's the clearest pop culture um, comparison I can think of. Tony Stark's AI in Iron Man, augmented reality, right?
Mhm.
It blended the virtual world with the real world through a number of projectors scattered around his office, his lab,
Mm.
whatever.
Mhm.
That, I think, would be the best way to do augmented reality, you know. But that's going to be extremely expensive, um, and a lot of installation, you know.
Yeah. Well, and at that point it would be less augmented reality and just like, things that are just floating around like a whole bunch of holograms and stuff. And I think
Yeah,
that's the reason why you would want to do it through a pair of glasses or something similar to that. Um to where, because essentially, right, you can just beam that directly into your eye, right? So, say only one side of it, right? We're going back to the Google Glass kind of deal.
right.
But like one side of your eye has stuff being beamed to it, and it just displays there. You won't notice it outside of the glasses or whatever like that, and you'll just get to see like, small bits of information and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's go back. What do you see for? Do you see this catching on? Let me ask you that.
Not this version, no.
Yeah, I
No.
don't either.
No, the price tag for it is way too out there. It's for
Yeah.
sure for the early adopters, right?
Right.
Um uh I know that I think if I'm not mistaken, they also did say that they were working on a
Um,
pardon me, sorry.
some sort of. I think I saw where you're going to. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no worries. No, I was just going to say they were working on a smaller, lighter version of something like this, right? Something
Okay.
similar to like how Meta has the Meta Pro,
Right.
Meta Quest Pro, I think it is, and then
Well,
they had. So go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. And
Mm-mm.
that is the thing that stood out to me though about the naming of this is the Vision Pro.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and typically anything Apple has put Pro in front of, there's like a light or an S version or a C version.
Mm-hmm.
That's more consumer friendly. So I was thinking that too. I bet you're right on that. But I didn't mean to cut you off, so go ahead.
No, no, you're good. You're good. So yeah, I mean, this is for sure supposed to be, like you said, the pro model, like the top of the line. It's the most bleeding edge when it comes to technology, all that good stuff. So it's gonna command, of course, that higher price tag. They are working on a lighter, thinner version of it, and we'll see how that works. I don't know when that's coming out. They haven't even given us any specs. I mean, this headset's not even coming out until next year.
Right.
So it's still very early days when it comes to this headset and um what we'll see. So the biggest thing for me when I first saw, and I still say this today, is like I just need to see it. I need to see it
Yeah.
in public and be able to actually touch it, and or at least get like real hands-on reviews of it and like see how it actually works, because you can see stuff in presentations all day every day, but it's never going to give you a really good idea of what the product is capable of, as well as what it some of the stuff that it can do. I
Yeah.
did see a review from Marquise Brownlee, so NKBHD, if you watch YouTube. um and he apparently got a chance to like use it and test it, and he was saying that the gesture controls was really good, because essentially, like when you're in AR mode and you're looking at apps, you use like your fingers, and you use kind of like this type of motion,
Yes. Right.
to select and stuff. So it and apparently it sounded like it was really really good, and it's using eye tracking, which is really, again, like I've told you before, like bleeding edge technology here, that they're using. And so it
Yeah.
was using some of that stuff to be able to get you to be able to make the interaction of the whole experience really well. But yeah, to kind of sum it up, I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that stood out for some of the biggest things that stood out for me. The price is still very, very high. The problem is, right, at 30, essentially $35,000, or sorry, not 35, but $3,500.
Yeah.
You can buy a MacBook Pro, a fully
Right.
specced out MacBook Pro, for the same price
Sure.
as that VR headset.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. And that's the weird thing. Do you think, like, what was their goal putting this out first? This being the main thing, something that most people like me, being a casual consumer, are not going to buy? Is it something to say, hey, these other, Samsung, LG, they're doing folding phones. We're thinking of something bigger, next step, you know,
Hmm.
something like that. Do you think that is what their goal was by presenting this the way they did?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's Apple's way to kind of say like, see, we're the we're showing our dominance in this space, right? Because if you think about it, right, Apple is never first to anything. Not really.
Yeah.
Um, they wait. They
Yeah.
wait for either the technology to mature, or for them to do it the Apple way. I guess that's the biggest thing. Um, and so they always come in with guns ablazing, and say, you know what, this is the way that things should be. This is the way that things are going to be. We're showing you how much more of a superior product that we can create. And so this is what those are the vibes that this gives me, right?
Yeah.
It's very much, we are going to do it our way, and we are going to show you how much better it is than any other VR experience that you've ever seen or had before.
Yeah, which I get that. Um, yeah, man, I don't know. This is a bold direction. I agree with, our um position on it, that This is a far off thing from having mass adoption. It's going to take a lot of investment from them to get people involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to take another decade or two worth of being able to scale down that tech to where it's a more comfortable wear and even cheaper too. Being the other thing, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Heck, this thing doesn't even have a battery that's connected directly to the device. It's a string
I
that,
know.
yeah, the battery is detached. So you'd like put it in your pocket,
Yeah,
and then you still have a cable going from the battery to the headset.
which I saw that and thought that was very weird. That's very 1990s, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
very early 2000s. I don't know, man. This is I love like I think I've been all over the place on my end on this. I love the idea of augmented reality.
Yeah,
I
me too.
don't like the idea of doing it through a massive headset. I especially don't like the idea of doing it on something that has to be consistently powered by a external battery. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like that at all.
Mm-hmm. Only has
Um,
2 hours of battery life.
yeah, but if I could come in my house, apartment, what have you, wherever you live, and you flip on a switch, and a virtual TV is imprinted on your wall, a virtual clock, all this kind of stuff, right? You don't have to buy these physical items. That's awesome. That's a great idea. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's cool that we're maybe taking steps toward that. Maybe that's what the Apple Home will be 30 years from now. You know, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. We'll have to see. Yeah, I don't know. This is just my thoughts about it. I was gonna move on unless you wanted to mention anything else.
No, I think we can move on.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Let's move on. There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack.
There is. So the MacBook Air, um, it's a 15-inch screen, which I know is the biggest for the airline.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird to say. Um, but I know you expressed some excitement for that, so I'd like to know why.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, by no means, I'm still not an Apple person. But I'll say in my job role, I have come to use an Apple product or a Mac, I should say, in a lot of scenarios. And so it has kind of made me more understanding on some of the Mac side uh, of like how things work, and I can see some productivity gains from using a Mac as like a daily driver or something similar to that. So I think the biggest thing for me, the reason why I think the 15-inch MacBook Air is significant is because I currently use it at work it's like a MacBook Air, which is great. I love the weight. I
Okay.
really do. But it's only like 13 inches.
Okay.
It's only like a 13-inch MacBook Air.
That's pretty small.
And it's small, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the screen is slightly too small for what I want to do.
Mm.
Especially when it comes to like productivity wise, it's great portability. Like it's something that I will for sure, if I need to like run really quickly around the office to do certain things, I'm going to grab that because it's the lightest thing that I have, or it's the lightest computer that I have in my bag, and it's small and I can move it around. And it's great. So just thinking of the weight of just how the Air already is, and then just making it slightly, maybe, yeah, making a bigger screen, um, and maybe the weight is going to go up just ever so slightly. That sounds like a win-win for me, right? Because
Yeah.
you now have the portability of or you have the weight savings that already comes with the MacBook Air. Because if you ever have held like some of the MacBook Pros, like the more chunky ones, like the 16-inch MacBook Pros, they're pretty heavy. They're not something you can move it around, of course, but it's heavier, especially if it's something that you're going to be moving really quickly and moving around. 16-inch MacBook Pro is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And so it's bringing that lightness that you get from the Air, but with a much bigger screen, I think is what really kind of wins me over, and that's the reason why I feel like it's a win, because I feel like it's like the perfect. And plus, there's already a 14-inch, if I'm not mistaken, MacBook Air that you can
Yes.
get. So now it's like they have every size that you could want, to really help you with whatever endeavor that you're going through. And so that's the reason why I think it's pretty amazing to
Right.
have a 15-inch MacBook Air. Yeah.
And for people who are very non-interested in tech, 15 inches from 14 to 15, that's a bigger shift than you might think, because it's not being measured this way. It's not being measured this way, horizontally or vertically. It's being measured. Oh wait, this is kind of hard to do. Reverse. Hold on. It's being measured diagonally. you
Yep.
know, and so for that to jump from 14 to 15, that's a considerable size gain. You
Yep.
know,
It is. It
um,
is.
remind me, does it lack any of the processing horsepower of a non-air model?
Um, what do you? No. It. Are you saying like does the 15 Air like
No,
not?
no. What I mean is, like,
Sorry.
so what all MacBook models are there? There's MacBook Air, right?
Uh huh. There's a MacBook Air and Pro
Pro.
for your
Those are
MacBooks.
those are the two.
Yep.
But the Pro has higher processing horsepower than the Air does, right?
Correct. Correct. So the MacBook Pros start with the M. I guess if we're going on the latest generation, they start with the M1, or sorry, M2 Pro chip, right? And the MacBook Airs have the M2 chip, just the base chip. So the difference there is the how many CPU cores that you're going to have, how many GPU cores. The big thing about their M2 processors is that everything is all housed together, right? So you automatically have your memory. So, or you already have your storage, your memory, and your GPU and CPU stuff all integrated together into one big chip. And so the MacBook Pros have a bigger integrated chip, as well as like it can have more RAM or memory than what an Air can have. Like for
Okay.
comparison, right? The Air can only have up to 24 gigs of RAM, um, as opposed to the MacBook Pro, being able to um, have it being able to go up to what is it? I'm checking really quickly
Okay.
here. I think it's like 32 gigs or 60, no, sorry, 64 gigs of RAM that you
Oh
can
wow.
have when it comes to memory. Um, so yeah, that's or no, it is 32 gigs. They actually changed it. So at one point you could get like 64, but it's like 32 gigs of memory. So that's a really big jump between the two. And so
Yeah.
yes, the Air has a lesser processor, but what we have seen overall is that the M2 and M1 chips that Apple has created are very efficient, one with battery life, as well as very just efficient in general when it comes to most tasks. So
Yeah.
it's probably one of the, if I needed to recommend a computer to someone who has some money to spend, because of course it's Apple, so it is kind of expensive. I would, and they wanted something that's thin and light, I would for sure recommend them to look at the Air series of Mac products if they're interested in Apple, because of just how well it does. And I will say the battery life is really, really good, just because of how efficient the chip is.
Right. So you're getting Apple's chips in everything now, which I know you mentioned to me earlier. Apple has officially put their own processing chips in all of their tech. So no
Correct.
Intel chips or anything like that. Um, and so you're getting a proprietary chip, even Air model, which is a good deal because you're basically getting an entry level MacBook or laptop, even though they're not cheap like entry level are, but
Mm-hmm.
good processing horsepower. It's light. It's got great features to it. That's an exciting time for sure. I know too that for the Mac OS stuff,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's new uh, software updates, and so there's things like new widgets. Of course, they are, especially with this new chip or these new chips being in everything now. They're really pushing gaming for the
Mm-hmm.
ability to be able to handle gaming, which is interesting. That's one thing I find between Intel, that other company I always forget, man. I always forget them. They start with an A, right?
Mm-hmm. Um,
The other chip company.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, it's either that or an R. But anyway, let me know if
Are
it's
you talking about because I mean there's of course Intel, right?
that's
There's also AMD. Is that the
that's what I
other
was,
chip company
yeah.
that you're talking about? And maybe you're talking about their Ryzen line of chips. So the
Yep.
Ryzen based
Yeah.
chips for AMD.
That's exactly right. Where the
Mm-hmm.
A and the R came from. AMD and now Apple. All three of them say they're the best for gaming. That's what's really interesting. You don't really hear much about like, oh, we're the best processors for video editing or
Mm-hmm.
audio editing. And I get there's a lot more consumers out there than there are creators, so I understand why they would market that. But you don't really see a whole lot of marketing for creators. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and go out a limb if you have an Intel processor or a AMD or an Apple product, you're going to be fine if you're creating audio or video content. If it's
Oh
if it's if it's 5 years ago or newer. So, um, but yeah, so I saw that. Of course, they have a bunch of things that's proprietary for them. They're saying Safari will be even safer because remember with Apple, you don't need antivirus software. Their stuff's just safe. That's what they say, man. You gonna argue with Tim Cook? Hi, I'm
Of
Tim
course I
Cook,
am. Of course
and
I am because
no, listen, I'm
that's
Tim
not
Cook.
true. You
No,
can
listen,
still
I'm Tim Cook, and I'm here to talk to you today about how Apple is safer than it's ever been.
You sounded like cowboy Tim Cook, but yeah.
I actually sounded like a stay-at-home mom who blogs about their new children in
Yeah.
the South. In the South, yeah. Today, Tucker pooped his pants, and I had to change his diaper inside the mall. It was a very scary experience for me.
I will never be taking Tucker out to the mall ever again.
Next time we do it, his father can change him. God bless and have a great week. Anyway, um, yeah, what were you saying though about Apple being hackable supposedly? Uh-oh, did Denison lose us? I think he lost us. Well, I'll vamp for him while he gets everything fixed. Basically, Apple for a long time has discussed that you don't have to have antivirus software or anything like that, but yet because of this, when their products do get hacked or their servers get hacked, it's even more high profile. For a long time, if you're a PC user, uh, Norton is often partnered with Windows as a privacy software, as an antivirus software, all that kind of stuff. And Windows comes with its own antivirus and privacy features, but they have never said you don't need anything extra. They always partner with a company who I believe they now have stake in, Norton. Apple is not that way. They never have been that way. And now they're just trying to say, hey, man, we're even safer than before, which is funny because they already said they were unhackable.
Yeah, well, so that's a myth, but so uh, and pardon me for my audio difficulties. My headset decided to turn itself off. Um,
Classic.
it just couldn't take any more of the nonsense. Um, but no, I mean, Windows, of course, does have Windows Defender, which has gotten a lot better in recent years. And I would say for most people's applications, you probably don't even need another antivirus other than regular Windows Defender because it has gotten pretty robust. I remember back in the day, it wasn't that great. But anyway, going back to Apple, um, I just want to put this out here for most people to understand just because you have a Mac does not mean that you can't get viruses, and it also does not mean that you are not susceptible to malware. It is easily hackable. It's just, I'll say at one point in time, and I think it has changed a little bit more nowadays, but at one point in time, one of the reasons why Apple could say that a little bit more was because of their market share, right?
Yeah.
So if you are a person who is creating malware or is creating a virus, um, if you have, say, a, I'm trying to think, if you're creating a virus and you want to hit as many people as possible, what are you going to do? You're going to create it for something that everyone has, right? And so that means that you are going to create it for, say, Windows, right? Because their market share is a lot bigger in the computer space than any other um, OS, right?
Right.
You're not going to create one for Linux. You're not going to create one for Mac because there's just not that many users. So it doesn't really make much sense for you to do it that way. Um, so of course that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why. Of course, Apple does do a pretty decent job of locking a lot of things down, so it does make it very difficult to where if someone were to say get onto your system, they would, there's a lot more roadblocks involved than what you would normally have with Windows. Now, of course, with Windows, you can put some of the same roadblocks in place that you have for Apple, or that your Mac does by default. But of course, the biggest thing about Windows is that it's supposed to be very much more open. So open for you to do all the stuff they would want to do. So that does lead you a little bit more vulnerable than say other things. But I would say that you are probably have the same likelihood for the most part of getting a virus or malware on Windows than as you would on Mac. Maybe slightly less, I guess, but I just want to preface it by saying just because you have a Mac or just because you have you're on Mac OS or whatever like that doesn't mean that you can't get virus, doesn't mean that you can't get hacked, because these are things that can be and can be hacked as well as can get these things. That's all.
Yeah. Absolutely. So don't be fooled. You too could be the victim of a Mac attack. Um,
Exactly.
so let's see. Passkey for safe password sharing, which has already been a thing. So I'm not really sure why they're touting that unless it was only for mobile.
Mm.
Uh, profiles, web apps. I can now. Oh, my bad. I should have read on. Roll the credits for after the Mac attack. You too could be the victim of a Mac attack. I don't know why it was Star Wars theme, but
Yeah, I know.
yeah. But web apps that can now be anchored directly to the Mac OS dock. Okay, we're about to jump into iOS 17. So people who are um phone users, smartphone users, Apple iPhone users stick around. But this plays into that. What is the OS dock? Remind me what that is. The Mac OS dock.
Um.
Is that like where the Apple
Oh,
ship comes and
no, no, that um similar to how like Windows has the taskbar at the bottom, right, where your apps will be displayed, you can pin specific apps and stuff. The dock is essentially the same thing for Mac OS. There's a spot where you will have your normal apps that you use all the time there.
okay, gotcha.
Hmm.
Well, that's not too exciting. And before we go into the iOS 17, there is one thing that stood out to me about this developers conference that they didn't mention.
Mm.
New smartphone technology. Now I know we got a couple months before that happens. It's usually in September.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know, man. I think they're not doing the folding stuff. We talked about this multiple times on this podcast. Will Apple do a folding phone? Either they are not, or they're behind on production and they're waiting until their September conference to share that with people.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, the thing is, I don't think they're not gonna talk about folding stuff, not in on for WDC. Um, sure, maybe software wise, but I feel like they would put that in the next WDC if they do unveil a folding phone this year. But
Gotcha.
honestly, I don't feel like that's in their radar right now. Um, Apple, for one, doesn't like to do two big announcements at the same event. It's usually pretty focused, and this one was mainly focused on the headset. So if they are going to do a folding phone, then it'll maybe be this year. But honestly, I think folding technology is still relatively new, even though there are becoming more and more players to
Yeah,
jump into the space. I think knowing Apple, right, they will want to do it their Apple way. And I think the way that folding technology is currently, I don't think that they can feasibly do it in a way that feels good, right? Because,
yeah,
for instance, the main, I will say, one of the leading folding like display manufacturers is Samsung. And Samsung has been working on this technology for years now, really, I guess decades at this point. Um, and they have made quite, very, very advanced um, movements when it comes to in this space. Not just with their phone, but for instance, the Google phone, the Pixel Fold that we talked about a few weeks back,
sure.
that is also using Samsung's display technology. Um, and I think Apple would like to. What I'm trying to say is that Samsung still hasn't gotten to a point to where the crease is small enough for people to feel like really not even notice it that much, even if even when it's been folded unfolded multiple times. And I think Apple won't jump in until it gets to a point to where it's a very minimal crease, and that's just not there. So
Yeah, sure. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up with iOS 17.
mm-hmm.
Guys, get ready to get your mind blown. Enhanced predictive text. Who could have seen that coming? Not me.
Yeah,
Not the guy.
machine learning is helping you get better predictive text. That's crazy.
So, is that a form of artificial intelligence that we're talking about?
Of course it is. Because but Apple has to put their Apple spin on it, so it can't be AI. It has to be machine learning.
Okay, but hasn't there always been? Now, I don't want to say always. Let's say for the last 4 years, five. I'll say five. Maybe even hell, I'll say six. Okay, so hasn't there already been that? I've noticed that where Apple would correct me on words I'm sorry, my iPhone would correct me on words for a long time, for a while, and then it would stop correcting me on those words. It wouldn't even mark that was improperly spelled, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Or is that something else entirely?
I mean, it could just be since it's better. If I'm not mistaken, I remember them saying that they're using more machine learning models to be able to do a better job at predictive text. So it really could be that they are working on a better version of
Predictive
predictive
text.
text, but it's
So it could
also
finish your
integrating.
sentences for you.
Yeah, maybe,
Gotcha.
maybe. They didn't display any of that during WDC, but I wouldn't be too surprised if that is something that they're that they are exploring or working on.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, they didn't allude to a lot of it, like actual AI related stuff. It's just like small enhancements I find.
Okay. Well, maybe that could be a nice prediction, or or a nice addition to the predictive text features of finishing sentences, already suggesting how you want to reply, kind of like Microsoft Teams already does and has for a while,
Mm-hmm.
or Outlook or all that stuff. Anyway, this has converted me from an Apple iPhone mainly stan to a critic, more or less. Um, let's see, they got new sticker functions. What?
Mm-hmm. Look at that.
Oh, that's right.
Crazy.
All those creepy stickers of yourself. Who knows what kind of crazy things you could do?
Mm-hmm.
Judas. Judas is scary. Christina just called me Judas. Oh man. I know.
Wow.
It's a little E2 Brute kind of a situation, you know. I don't I mean, look, I'm still sticking with my iPhone. Like, I'm not gonna get rid of this. But I still think it is the best. Let me clarify. I still think it's the best smartphone and smartphone tech that you could get. But I do think they make themselves sound like God tore open the veil and handed them software upgrades. And that's what's going into the next iOS. They do that every freaking time. Guys, your life's about to be changed because of machine learning predictive text.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you mean basically a small upgrade to the thing we've already had for almost a decade now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that kind of a thing.
See?
All I mean, I'm still team iPhone. I will always probably be team iPhone. And this old boy been rocking it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So I gotta just interject really quickly. You have come a long way, my son. I am proud. I am proud that you have slowly started
Yes.
to understand. You've started to understand what it really means to be an objective viewer of technology. Um,
Desmond right now, he's basically like, yes, let the hatred flow through you. Oh
um,
man.
I will say, right, and the thing is, you've also noticed this for me. I have become a little bit more lenient on Apple and their stuff. I will say, for most people, I would, if someone had to recommend me a phone, most of the time I will actually tell them to just get an iPhone.
Right.
Reason being is because I will say the user interface on it, if you've never used a smartphone, um, is very good.
Yeah.
And it does a pretty decent job. And their software doesn't have, I'll say, sometimes not as many bugs as, say, an Android phone would. Plus, most users, when they're trying to get a phone and they do not know anything about phones, they will usually, if they go to an Android phone, they're going to get the cheapest Android phone, and then they get mad about their experience because the cheap Android phone doesn't have great specs,
Mhm.
but they don't understand that, right? With
Right.
Android, you kind of have to understand the specifications that are
It's a lot
going
more
into that
options.
phone.
Hmm.
Exactly, because there's a lot more options.
Yep.
And if you have a poor spec phone, you are going to have a poor experience. Where if you have a higher end spec phone, you are going to have a really good experience, and it's going to last you a lot longer. Um, but I feel like that's something that is kind of hard for most people to get. So that's the reason why I tell them to go over to an iPhone, because for the most part, your experience is going to be pretty much the same across the board.
Yeah.
Um, I get bored of that. I get bored of a phone that's pretty much the same all the time, and I can't do
Yeah.
anything about it. Um, so
I know. That's why I love about it is it's the same every time I open it.
yeah,
Ain't
I
got
mean,
like, what?
yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I like to use my phone for different purposes. But if your normal stuff is like, media, viewing media, um,
producing
text
media.
messages, um, and stuff like that, it calls like normal basic stuff. It works great.
And producing media.
I mean,
Man,
I'll
it's so
say,
easy to edit and put a video out, dude. It's so easy. As someone who works in communications and social media, you know what
I
I
mean,
mean?
I can do the same thing on my Android phone.
Well, I mean, I don't know if
The
it's
same.
easier. I don't know, but I'm just saying it is really easy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess, but it's. I feel like that's more of a subjective thing. I will say for certain pieces of content, yes. I will say if you're going to take a picture quickly, it's gotten a lot better on Android, in the past a few years. But I will say for the longest time, Apple has had the advantage of lazy developers. That's, I mean, plain and simple, that's essentially what it is. The reason why I have to say that is because for Android, the reason why there's been this huge joke of where people are like, oh, well, at least you must have an Android phone. Your pictures came out really garbage. It's like, technically, it's not even an Android person's fault because the
No.
pictures come out great on their phone. It's just when they post it to social media, since these developers of the applications have gotten lazy and not tried to properly optimize the application for their phone, um, it comes out in a lower quality view than than what is actually on the phone. A lot of times, I would say objectively, the pictures can be almost the better. I will say certain phones, depending on the phone, take better photos than iPhones do. It's
No.
just, again, it's how things are being pushed out there.
Well, um, yeah, I know you said objectively and meant subjectively, but
Yes,
I
sorry.
would agree with that. Just from what I've seen, certain Samsungs and LGs take absolutely phenomenal photos. Um, I was more talking about the editing process. Like
Mm,
it's so easy to edit on an iPhone. Simple edits. Simple edits. If you have to go in deep, I mean, it's not going to matter if you have an iPhone or an Android. It doesn't matter because you have to use a separate application, probably Adobe, regardless. So,
mhm.
um, but but yeah. So I don't know. I just love that part of it. But this is where the battle begins. But let's see. It's focusing on outside of the predictive text and the stickers. Uh,
Oh man.
it's also integrating some of the new features of Mac OS 14, which is what we were just talking about earlier. So extra safe Safari.
Hmm.
I'm guessing since new iPhones will have the M series silicone chip in them, then they will have better processing and better gaming experiences.
They don't. They just have their regular A series chips. The
Oh
A
yeah.
series chips are for the iPhones, and the M series are usually or for the Macs, other than the iPad Pros, which
Well,
are
that's lame.
all M1 chips as well.
So why the hell did they get people together for 3 days just to tell them, hey, you're going to be able to text better? Oh, and here's some glasses.
Because it's a developer conference. I think that's one thing that a lot of people forget. WDC is for developers, so that way, um, they can, it's Apple's way to tell, like, hey developers, this is what we've been working on, now start to integrate some of this stuff into your own applications to make things better and make the experience better for our users.
Oh, well then why do they put that on YouTube for everyone to stream it?
Because anybody can be a developer.
Oh yeah, that's right. My bad.
Plus, it's
Well,
a great way to get most. It's a great way to get hype for just anyone, right? For people who want to buy their products, right? That's still the reason why products, actual products like the 15-inch MacBook Air, as well as the Vision Pro headset, as well as the Mac Pro upgrade and the Mac Studio upgrade. All of those were unveiled this year, um, even though it's technically mainly a developer conference.
gotcha. Okay. Well, it's pretty lame outside the goggles, dude. I'm not gonna lie. I'm, I'm gonna keep calling them goggles too. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, they're pretty cool goggles, man.
I mean, yeah, I said outside of the goggles. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I'm not spending $3,500 on goggles.
I'm not either. I'm not either. Like I said,
I
you can
gotta
get a
walk around with
fully
a
spec
I'm gonna look
Mac
like
Pro.
I'm gonna look like Mr. Krabs walking around with batteries in my pocket. Nah, I'm not doing that, man. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is interesting though to break it all down. Like you said, this is leaning toward the future, kind of showing what is yet to come,
Hmm.
which I think is very cool. Um, I don't know if you had anything else to mention before we wrapped up. I just kind of had a thought off the top of my head. I had this really cool chance. I know I've talked about this on here before. I'm in a cover band along with my original band. The cover band is called A Band in Kansas. It used to be an original band called Abandoned Kansas. Um, there was a reunion about a week and a half ago, and the drummer was Tim Dodd. If you don't know who Tim Dodd is, look up Everyday Astronaut on YouTube. Um, this man is going to be one of the first normal people like you and I to be able to go to space. And he got to that point just from his YouTube channel. He got a personalized tour of SpaceX from Elon Musk. The whole night we had people coming up to him being like, "Hey, I watch you on YouTube." He was the most famous dude up on the stage. It was wild, and it wasn't even close. So it was really cool. I just bring it up because I thought it was a cool experience, but I also think if you like what we talk about on this podcast, you will like his content very much. So check that out. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say about this, dude. Do you have anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap it?
Um, I don't think I have anything else to say about it. I guess actually the two things that I did want to really briefly talk about is we briefly kind of touched upon it. Apple has finally moved over or moved away from fully from using Intel chips. This is a big deal. The reason why this is a big deal is because um Intel was a very big user, or really, it was really big for Intel to have users on there. And for the longest time, when Apple revamped their Mac Pro series of computers, which is a really, they're essentially their top of the line deal. Uh, at the forefront of it was a really strong, very powerful Intel chip, and now that they've moved fully away from that and adopted essentially their latest M2, I think it's M2 Ultra chip, is what it's called. Um, they're fully away from Apple, or they're fully away from Apple, fully away from Intel.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just kind of showing you how Apple has kind of internalized themselves, I guess, in some ways, right? Made it to where everything is built in house. It's a streamlined process more now. And it'll be really interesting to see exactly what this has or what this will do for the future
Yeah.
for a lot of stuff. Because I will say that, you know, now Intel's gonna, I feel like, really gonna feel the pressure as they already did, but I feel like they're gonna feel it even more.
to what?
When it comes to like the computing space, right? Um, uh, of course, they have Windows computers, but they're already feeling pressure when it comes to AMD, right? Um, but now AMD fully filling in their market share because their AMD processors have come a long way from where they were before. But now that you have Apple fully moved away from using Intel chips, now they have another competitor that they're kind of fighting against. So
But
it'll
what?
be.
Oh,
Right.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no, no. Go ahead.
Well, in what way do they need to step up though? That's my question. What are they lacking in that's allowing these other people to step up?
I think it's just because they one of the biggest things, right, is Apple has moved their process. So essentially, how the processors are created, the size. To, if I'm not mistaken, they're down to a 4 nanometer processor or no 4 nanometer process, which is essentially the smaller the process, the more stuff you can put onto that one chip.
Okay.
Um, so that's the reason why Apple's been able to get like really big gains. I think the latest one is technically on a 3 nanometer process, but anyway, like I said, it's pulling a lot of that in there. Where Intel, I think, is still on like a 7, maybe 5 nanometer process at this point. So they're already pretty far kind of behind. And I think even AMD has moved over to a 4 nanometer process. So that's what I mean about them trying to catch up, because essentially what that means is the competition can now put in more cores into their PC or into their processors. They're able to do more with that extra space. And they're able to make their processors more efficient and faster and all around better, and essentially can outperform what Intel has to offer currently. That's the
Got
reason why I say they need to step their game up, because if consumers, right, start to understand and see that, say, their competition is able to be more efficient with the amount of space that they have and being on their processors, and it's able to give them really big performance gains. Why would you invest in an Intel chip, right, when you can get something from AMD, or you can move directly over to Apple and get one of their M2 chips? And it has higher performance than what you can get with an Intel chip laptop or computer or something similar to that.
right. Right.
So taking away market share from them.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that helps explain that. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
It's also going to allow Apple to build more of their own unique things like these Vision Pro augmented reality headsets, like we were talking about,
yeah,
um, because they can design the chips to whatever spec they need.
correct.
Mhm.
More vertical integration to make things more efficient and better overall for their users. So yeah.
Vertical integration was right on the tip of my tongue, man.
Hmm.
Um, so, all right, guys. Well, this has been a great episode. Thank you for watching with us. Thank you for jumping in the comments as well. Um, like I said, we do this every week on Thursday night.
Hmm.
So please follow along if you haven't already, and subscribe if you like us. Leave a rating and review. If you want to support us monetarily, because it does cost to put this show on, please check out our merch in the link in the bio. All right, well, that's it. I think we had a good one on this.
Hmm.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch up with you next week.